Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott back again for another episode of the Nolecast. This is our wide receiver position preview. Um, Interesting group to talk about, Bud. Got a lot of experienced guys that have been in the system for quite a while. You've got some talented young individuals, and you have some big shoes to fill, both metaphorical and literal. So interested to talk about this group. We'll group the tight ends with it as well. Um, so we'll jump in here and try to give you as good of an idea as to one of the position groups that may have as many questions surrounding it as any on the 2024 Florida State team.
Yeah, man. I feel like in some ways the defense and the O line and the run game provide the floor for this football team, but the receiving core is largely going to, in my opinion, determine the ceiling for this team. Like how good it's going to be is probably going to determine how good you'll be, because there are certain teams that I do feel like probably not completely shut down, but limit your run game if your receivers are not a serious threat to the opposing defense. All right, so first down. I mean, let's just get to it. How big is the drop off? You lose 130 catches, 1,700 and almost 1,800 yards between Keon, Johnny, and Jaheim Bell. And obviously, like, Keon caught 11 touchdowns, which is nuts. Johnny 2, Jaheim 2, and yet in some, like, the drop off to me is real. And, like, I mean, you go from one of the best receiving corps in the conference to, I don't know, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, somewhere around there in the ACC as far as like rooms I think I'd rather have. It could be wrong, could be a little bit better depending on how things shake out. But also, like, down the stretch, you didn't really have healthy Keon Coleman at all. And I think it's crazy to think about like the type of numbers he could have put up had he stayed healthy. And Johnny was also dinged up pretty good, and so was Jaheim. So we would be talking about a much bigger drop off if those three top guys had not been hurt down the stretch. I mean, it would have been 150 something catches, over 2,000 yards, and 20 touchdowns. You're like,
Mhm.
okay, this is one of the biggest drop offs in the whole country from a receiver perspective.
Yeah, Jaheim was never really the same after game 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Johnny, just dealt with issues, both concussion and otherwise throughout the season, it seemed like. And yeah, I don't know exactly when it happened with Keon. I mean, obviously he misses the pit game. That's a pretty good point in time. But not the guy, Keon Coleman, the first 4 or 5 games of the season was probably the best, or may well have been the best wide receiver in the country. And was just not that at the end of the year. That again, it's one of the things that makes you the most frustrated about the snub is because I think you would have seen a healthy Keon Coleman again, and maybe a Jaheim Bell that you really only saw for the LSU game, as far as games that were competitive and in question. So we're we're very right to point out what is gone, but also a lot of these holes existed throughout times in the season, but you didn't get a whole lot of great answers from him either. The Keon was out in the pit game, and Destin was already nursing an injury in that game, and was limited in rotation. And it took uh, Trey Benson runs, and it took Ja'Kai Douglas, really kind of making himself available, which I think is going to be a large part of the offense and a large question, or a large part of the question that we're bringing up right now. So, I think Ja'Kai and we put Jaylen Lucas into this group as well. Um, I 2 shows ago we talked about DJU's experience with throwing to 5'8" wide receivers, and I'm thrilled that he has it because I think it's going to matter. Now, I will say that, like, I think sometimes, not so much the Nolecast or whatever. I just think media in general downplays Ja'Kai a little bit because he is 5'8", right? I'll tell you just from like discussions with players on the team and in general, almost all the defensive backs will tell you Ja'Kai Douglas is the hardest guy to cover on this team. I mean, he is a legitimate athlete and can be, very hard to defend. It's just interesting to see the situations that Mike will come up to create those opportunities for him. Obviously, historically, we have, the play against Miami that helped to set up 4th and 14, the deep shot against Notre Dame. I mean, we've got an idea as to how Ja'Kai can feature in this offense. Um, I don't know that it'll be quite the Pitt game where I can't remember. I'll look up exactly here how many catches he had, but Ja'Kai Douglas is going to be a large part of the conversation that we have here tonight and what you'll see this year.
The other part I would say here is like, it scares me to death that so many of the guys we're talking about, it's like, hey, Mike can find a way to scheme him open. Because what we don't have on this team so far, based on how spring went, and based on everything we've seen so far, is somebody who just gets themselves open consistently, right? If everybody has to be schemed open, whether that's with certain route combos or off play action, that will bite you against the best teams out there that you're going to play. Like Ja'Kai Douglas coming up huge for you against Pitt, and I know he's coming up huge for you against Clemson, actually, like schemed open, but he's not a guy who's going to go out there and win, without being schemed open. But I don't know if they have that guy like that. But I think the solace I would take is that if you do believe that the offensive line is better, and I do, and we just got done doing the running back preview episode. We both think they're going to run the ball like actually 50+% run pass ratio. Then the shoes that you have to fill are not quite as big because you're just not passing the ball as much. At FSU's quarterbacks last year, I mean, they have 356 plus 130. I mean, plus that like 500 dropbacks. If DJ drops back, 400 something times this year, not counting like any kind of playoff, then you're probably going like 8-4, right? Like that's not a good thing to be throwing the ball that much with this receiving core. So, maybe the shoes aren't quite as big because other aspects of the offense are going to carry more of the actual offensive load, even if the receiving load is to me a bit of a drop off. But let's go positive. Let's go second down. Legendary team bringing you the second down. And this question actually comes from Chad. 844 FSU Loan is the number to call. You can, of course, find the link to the website in the show notes if you want to go that way. Legendary team, 550 plus loans now to Nolecast members. Gotta love that. I've done it twice, so I'm two of those. I mean, technically, I'm a listener, but I'm also a talent on the show. Can this be a top half room in the Power Four? And who has to step up to minimize the drop off?
Well, I mean, look, it's going to be really interesting to see how Malik Benson continues to be worked into the offense and what it looks like when they go full pads. I mean, he participated in spring, so it's not as though we don't have an idea of that. But as you have more of an idea as to what your first team offense looks like, and as you have a better idea as to the role and amount that these guys are going to feature, all of this said, the answer is Hakeem Williams, in my opinion. I mean, Malik Benson is dynamic, and Malik Benson is really tailor made for some of the things that I think you're going to want to see out of this offense. But if Hakeem Williams steps up, and if Hakeem Williams, turns into what we all think he can be, then this is a totally different offense. And it's Hakeem, I said this in the quarterback preview. Hakeem can be a piece that unlocks. I mean, he can, he can be the piece that unlocks Kyle Morlock. He can be the piece that unlocks your running backs. There's just so much that can be added to this offense if you can get him to, up to the level that we think is possible. But Hakeem is still a very raw product that didn't have a ton of high school coaching. I tell you, kid has an incredible work ethic and is very, very focused on football. But it doesn't, this isn't NCAA 25 where you get a 5-star wide receiver and he grows by 6 or 7 points every year or whatever. I mean, you got to continue to develop the talent. And I have 100% faith that that talent is going to come to fruition. We'll just, see at what point it does, and if it does this year.
I mean, that's the answer. It's Hakeem. If Hakeem hits, this team, to me is a much better team than if he doesn't. If Hakeem doesn't hit, there's not a lot of guys out there that scare a good defense. Now, Malik Benson, if he hits, could scare a decent ACC defense and maybe a little bit better. I, against my better judgment, I'm tending to believe that he's going to be like a solid player for you. Now, and that's because of what he did this spring. Like Benson in spring looked like your best receiver. I know, like the people I talked to at FSU were kind of hyping him as like a wide receiver one. I think ultimately he's probably more of a wide receiver two who may have to play a wide receiver one role for you, and clearly a bigger role than you thought he was going to have to play before Destin Hill, got hurt and likely won't be available this season. But man, it is so scary relying on a guy who was that bad last year at Alabama. I mean, 0.8 yards per route run is one of the worst in the Power Four. Like that's just, I can't sugarcoat that. That's terrible. Now you could tell me he was like the third receiver in Alabama. I think that's very fair. You could tell me that Isaiah Bond was running a lot of the routes that are probably more preferable to run with a Malik Benson. I think I totally agree with that. And that's sort of why I'm believing he can be a useful player for you. But I do kind of think, man, if Benson is your receiver one, that puts a ceiling on what this team can be ultimately. So you do need Hakeem to be that guy. And dude, if Benson does not play at least like a decent two that happens to have to play one for you, then I think you're in real trouble. Like that, then this offense is not that scary to play. Like that's sort of the death combo for this team if Hakeem and Benson both don't hit, or if neither of them hit, rather.
Mm-hmm. I think you, as fans, can have a reasonable degree of confidence that Benson's going to give you a B plus season at the very least. I mean, he did come on throughout spring. He's developed as a wide receiver just in the couple of months, or in the couple of months of real play that he's had at Florida State from a competitive practice standpoint. Is what I'm saying. A couple months. Seems to have a good rapport with DJU. We'll see what that matters by game 4. Yeah, that's nice. It's nice that they have that in practice. We'll see what it matters
Better
when
than not having it.
it is better than not having it. And look, when this kid signed, I didn't think he'd be a piece of your offense at all for a year, but I do think Jaylen Brown is going to play a role here. And another super fast guy. Admittedly, ahead of schedule from where my, layman's talent evaluation comes into play, but a guy who made some plays, and not just pure 9 routes or whatever since he's been here. He's made some competitive catches, some things that I really wanted to see as far as the development of a player has been impressive. What you've seen from Brown, but yeah, man, I just I don't know that there's. I mean, look, obviously, I don't want anybody on the team to get hurt, but uh, Destin Hill is a very unfortunate situation, and was going to be year 1 or year 2 in this group, and very much changes the the tenor of the conversation we're having tonight by the fact that Destin's not available.
Totally. He was showing some real promise, and it also, the FSU has been extremely resourceful with the portal. But if the guy's not in the portal, the guy's not in the portal. And the options available in the spring window were all sort of catch and run guys. And you already have how many catch and run type things have we already discussed? Philly and Lucas and all that type of thing. You have catch and run guys. There wasn't really any like true big body guy in the portal who can get himself open and win 50-50 balls, that type of thing. And if there was, with all due respect to DJU, I think that person may have chose to go, to a little bit more elevated offense based on where FSU is in his current developmental cycle of this offense. But there were offenses that I'm projecting to be way better than FSU that were left hurting for lack of a bigger bodied receiver. So it's not just you as the Noles in that spot. Which leads me to Kentrell Portier. If not now, then never.
Mhm.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
senior.
Same for Darian.
Yeah.
Darian Williamson. Two kind of similar bodied guys and different style players. Um, I mean, I guess you can throw Deuce Spann into this conversation as well. I mean, all those guys are impressively, have been physically gifted, good height. Um, yeah, we'll just see. I mean, honestly, if you told me one of the three hit, I'd take it at this point.
God, yeah.
If you really got development, well, not even development, but just saw. And look, Kentron, there's been flashes. Darian's had some. Deuce Spann is as gifted a pure athlete as is on the team. I mean, I've said this 3 or 4 times. Every time I go to practice and I see Deuce, break out at a position group, I do a double take because that is what an NFL wide receiver looks like. I mean, that is what you want, and obviously, we've seen it in some of the flashes. Took a kick back to the house last year. Really talented kid. Um, but yeah, can you have one of those three really emerge and be the player that you think he can? And Kentron obviously had a solid, one of the few people against Georgia that really had a solid game, and you hope that he can continue to build on that.
I'm right there with you. Like, consistency of habits matter, and like Norvell's intense on these guys. Like he wants them to run the right route consistently.
As
Like you're a
wide
senior.
as Norvell's incredibly intense individual, as intense with this position group as any on the field.
Yeah. I also do think that it comes it if you look at how much FSU's recruiting has improved. I don't think FSU would take Kentron as a high schooler now. I don't think FSU would take Darion as a high schooler now. And I definitely don't think that they would take Spann as a transfer now with where they are in their talent acquisition cycle. Like they took them 3 years ago, 4 years ago when they were desperate. And they're not nearly as desperate now. So, they're just bringing in a higher caliber of player than those guys.
Yeah. No,
That's it.
your wide receiver class this year is special, and that is a different thing. Yeah, it's hard to say, but they're you know who you have, who you've poured into, and who has given the effort to stay in the program and continue to develop. Some of these guys could have had opportunities to go in the portal and go elsewhere, chose not to, chose to stay here and bet on themselves. So be really interesting. Personally, I think very highly of some of the kids that we're talking about right now, and I really hope that it works out for them because I know how hard they've worked, and I hope that it hits.
FSU desperately needs it too. The one kid that I wish could have early enrolled is Elijah Moore.
Mhm.
I liked him a lot at OT7 finals last year out in Cali. Nice senior season. The track record on freshman receivers who are summer enrollees actually contributing, not just at FSU, but really everywhere, I could tell you is about zero. So if he happens to be a unicorn and the guy's able to,
He does have a situational skill set that you can put in immediately, though.
yeah,
I mean, he does have the ability to go up and high point a ball that you can get somebody ready for that. Like this is way back in the day, but like Andre Cooper forced his way onto the field at Florida State earlier than most wide receivers did at that time because he was a big 6'5" wide receiver who had basketball background, and when you were inside the 8, you could throw it up to him and he had a pretty good chance to go and get it. And I wouldn't shock me if you didn't see some opportunities like that for Elijah Moore. But no, I mean, it's true. Even like, so different position, but let's use the Conrad Hussey example. Okay.
yeah,
Conrad is as physically gifted as you can possibly be. Conrad moves from yard 1 to yard 8, maybe as fast as anybody on the team and as fast as anybody as I've seen in quite a while. Conrad came from as good of a high school program as you can to get kids ready to play big time football. And it still took until the Pitt game before they really started to let him have moments at a position that you kind of needed a good amount of help in last year. So it's just tough, man. And I know early enrollees have almost become the norm, and you can see the level of importance that it has, just based off, where the kids start and how quickly they get incorporated into the program. Let's talk tight ends real quickly.
Yeah.
Unless there's, if there's other people you want to talk about in the wide receiver room, we certainly can. But
I don't think I'm missing anybody. I think I've pretty much emptied the clip on who I wanted to discuss. I mean, hell, if I said one of Brown, Kentron, Darion, and Span emerge and are a consistent, reliable player, you're taking that too, right?
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
me too. I think because like I know what Douglas can be as like a potential slot. You know, if Benson's like a 2 and Brown's like a good power 4-3 basically, and you have third down here, the tight end, and a good run game and a hell of a defense, I think, then you got something. So third
And
down,
you'll do things with Jaylen Lucas. I mean,
yes.
the staff loves him, and it's just, I don't know. Honestly, we could do a Jaylen Lucas 5-minute preview because I'm not sure if we should put him in the wide receivers or the running backs. He's a totally different guy than anybody else on the roster.
Oh, one thing I did want to bring up on more. I just remembered this. Do you remember like 10-ish years ago when we were like, yeah, Jimbo doesn't really play these freshmen, and we would get pushed back in the building, and then like, you would see freshmen play at other programs. Now, a lot of times that's early enrollee freshmen, and in certain cases, those are like top 5 freshmen in the country type thing, like an Alabama. But Lane Kiffin actually discussed this recently. He said, "Yeah, we had a different signaler for the quarterback, the O line, the receivers, the running backs, and a designated guy to signal for the true freshman."
Hmm.
So they would not get the signals that like he would literally just yell to them what route to run. Like that's Alabama, where like peak Alabama at when Lane was working for Nick. So I just think Mike does a pretty good job of figuring out the way to get his best players on the field. So if Moore does happen to pick up enough to justify being on the field, I think Mike will like you don't need to know the whole route tree and know every single play to play in this offense. I think we've seen that for sure. Third down, can tight end be improved despite losing Jaheim Bell, which is kind of a wild thing to ask, right?
Yeah, but again, if you had LSU Jaheim Bell throughout the course of the season, I'd say that's a bad question.
Yeah,
But yeah, it absolutely. In fact, I will say I would be very surprised if tight end play is not improved. Jackson West is a very solid player. Coaches love him. You see why. Really hard worker, creates opportunities for himself. I think he's a little bit better than he was last year. It's early.
please stay healthy.
Let's check in, after we've seen full pads and after we've seen scrimmage. But I will say what I said on a podcast two episodes ago. Kyle Morlock looks like a different dude, and he looks like he's put on maybe 6 or 7 pounds of muscle, maybe a little bit more than that. I may be underselling him, but he's making plays that I didn't see Kyle Morlock make all year. He's making catches, really contested catches that stand out to me. That is a guy that, and we've said it, you don't just jump from D2 shorter college, or I guess shorter university now in Rome, Georgia, to playing Florida State football and not have a transition period, not have scaling up. He's got to improve in some aspects of run blocking and things like that, which the size that he's put on will help him, and the familiarity with ball at this level will, I think, absolutely help him with that. Um, but Kyle Morlock can be a different level player for you. I don't think I'm selling you just wild hyperbole when I say that. And again, we'll check in after full pads and we'll see what it looks like. But so far, early returns very, very positive as to what that'll look like. Then you got 2 freshmen we can talk about: Landon Thomas and Amari Williams. I think the sky is the limit for both of them. I think you may see Amari Williams play some this year, and that's kind of wild for a kid who literally just turned 18, and I don't know has really played a ton of tight end ever, but you've just got a different level athlete there, and it's not real fair to like judge people by their dad or whatever. But if you're not familiar, his dad was one of the best running backs in Kentucky history.
Yeah.
Go watch the running back that is his father, and it doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get that, but that'll give you a good indication as to the raw athlete that you have. And Amari probably still has another inch or two of growth in him. Really young kid, ultimately maybe a defensive end. I think, we'll see. We'll worry about that later. But I do think you'll see him play at tight end this year.
I mean, that's just freaky. Like tight end is not a spot where true freshmen play really anywhere. I mean, take the Elijah Moore comments I just made and like
Hmm.
microwave them like crazy.
Hmm.
So, but again, I think it speaks to the level of athleticism in the room. I mean, Morlock being improved, first of all, to kind of circle back to your first comment, that's huge. They need him to be like it. If you lose, I definitely have more hope that Morlock can replace what Bell gave you than I do any of these receivers replacing what Keon and Johnny gave you. Especially if he can improve as a run blocker, because Bell was not a plus run blocker certainly in his time. He's more of a receiving threat. That would be huge. If Jackson West can stay healthy, like he is a guy who blocks with great tenacity, and I think look, if Preston Daniel could play for you a lot in this offense,
Hmm.
then Jackson West can play for you, right? And physically, certainly that's the case. And I mean, if Amari Williams can play, like that's cool, man. Like you got some games down the stretch where you may need some of this, right? I mean, I think you'll score on Georgia Tech pretty much regardless. I think you'll score on Boston College and Memphis and Cal, and SMU allegedly has a good defense. But I mean, there may be a game where you have to have really good tight end play. Like, what if Clemson just says, "Yeah, these receivers don't scare us a damn bit"?
Hmm.
Like that could be a rock fight. To where maybe it's a 17-13 or a 7-3 game or something. Who knows? But getting better tight end play would be absolutely huge. And I think there's a chance. I don't know if it's like definite, but I think there is a chance that they're better at receiver if Morlock continues this ascension. So, or excuse me, at tight end, that'd be nice. Um, Tell me about Charlie Park. Tell me about fourth down.
Charlie Park is an awesome rooftop bar there in Tallahassee, up by the AC Marriott Cascade Parks. A lot of just kind of food forward ideas that they try. I love it. Some fantastic cocktails as well, if that's your thing. My wife always loves going up there and having a drink or two. A place that is location wise unlike anything else in Tallahassee. Charlie Park Rooftop Restaurant.com or rooftopbar.com, excuse me, and all the other wonderful options that you have as far as for the table restaurant group at Tallahassee. And not sure if we hit them with a third down or not, but Congruity, Matt Lewis and his team, congruityhr.com is the website. Matt has worked with what is approaching 20 Florida State fans now via the Nolecast, and I wholeheartedly recommend him, as does Bud. And he's been a fantastic addition to everything that we do.
So, fourth down is this the last year we have questions about this room's talent from an ACC perspective?
All right,
I
so
think so.
I mean, maybe I just you're certainly addressing what you are in high school this year, and we'll see how quickly. I think so. I mean, I don't know that you'll have just the lack of options at wide receiver that you did really in kind of both portals. Certainly in the second window this year. So I think you can have confidence that you'll probably go out and add a very solid piece. And then, from there, what is Hakeem? What does Jaylen look like? And then, what have these young pieces developed into? And candidly, what position is Makai Danzy playing?
Yeah.
That may play into all of this, but I think you're definitely on the right route. It may just be, one more year where you got to supplement a significant piece in the portal to answer to make that a yes. And again, if Akeem Williams in game 4, the light comes on and the level of blocker you see translates into the wide receiver, then hell yeah, the answer is yes. The answer is an affirmative yes.
If you look at like a Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, when they lose a guy that goes undrafted, it's like no sweat. Like we really just expect to replace that level of production almost regardless. Now there's a case of like a super crafty college nickel or something like that who just doesn't run well enough. But I mean, you're going to lose Benson, you're going to lose Kentron, Span, and Darion. All four of those guys right now have an undrafted grade from the NFL, like from the services that the NFL subscribes to. Obviously, I think Benson has a real chance to to be drafted because of the speed that I think he could run at the combine if he has a big time year. I can't fully rule out the other guys. Darion would be the number 2 guy there. I would have potentially because he does, I think, have some real juice to his game if he could actually stay healthy for a couple games in a row. Which, knock on wood, man, I hope he does because he's one of my favorite players to watch on the team in the very limited sample set that he's actually been on the field. But I mean, next year you have Brown, Hill, Hakeem. If one of those doesn't hit, a transfer. Moore, Camden Fryer, BJ.
Yeah, Fryer is a great name to throw out here.
Like, I mean, I think the days of not having one of the better ACC receiving corps is done. And this year there's a heck of a lot of ACC rooms that I would rather have. But I think I think this is the last year of that. I really do. And I'm encouraged that the level of talent acquisition is finally at this position really kicking into gear how you want it to. So I think it's long term for Nole fans. I'm very excited about it. This year, I really don't know. We'll see.
I'll point out the sweet section sign I have behind me now. I got this via Collectible Exchange. You could go there. Unfortunately, dope ass stuff like this, as far as section signs and stuff, has since sold out, but still have a lot of bricks and other framed memorabilia, whether it be Peter Warwick or the Jared Verse bricks that we've done. We'll have some other things, I believe, in the pipeline tied to stuff like that, but we'll put a link in the show notes moving forward as far as the relationship that we have a Collectible Exchange, and that is a great way to secure a piece of history from Doak Campbell Stadium while also supporting the future of the program. So we got the battle. I put a Battles In logo on there, bud. I've got my mic stand here. The Nolecast one's kind of getting washed out, but yeah, put a little twist on it. So
I love it, man. That is awesome.
And I got so many lights in this room now, I'm not going to be able to go to sleep for like 2 hours, but it still appears dark on my camera, so I don't know what the hell's going on there.
I think it's better now, dude.
It's better. I mean, it needs to be better. I legitimately my eyes hurt because of how many lights I have right over here, but we'll keep working on it.
Oh, dude, like in the whatever, what do they call the Colts Dome in Indy?
Yeah, RCA.
It was RCA.
Yeah, now it's Lucas. Lucas Oil.
Yeah, I was talking. Well, 2 stories. One, Cadell was talking about how much he thinks there's like fake noise pumped in when he lost to Peyton Manning, and I was like, I don't doubt that, but also like, you did have to go play Peyton Manning on turf with Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. Those guys, like, yeah, we lost twice in the playoffs. That was tough. The lights in there for the production, I was like, this is I don't know how you do like a 3-hour show, 2 hours, and I was cooked. So, awesome, man. That's all I got on receivers.
Cool.
If they are a top half room in the ACC, I think FSU fans are going to like the results you get out of this football team. I think that's possible.